rode in a gang. They left me to die after I'd been shot. I left the gang after the gang left me. I tried to go straight. I did. Then I got me more trouble.
You can't change, John.
You couldn't shoot a fart out of your own ass.
We don't make deals with Activision. Yeah, you do.
You are the bounty hunter, huh? Your country loves to make trouble in mine. Perhaps you come to hunt me, huh?
You always did have a high opinion of yourself, John.
This is America, where a lying, cheating degenerate can prosper.
What will you do now, Mr. Marston?
Now I'm gonna take my time and go after him the less kind way.
It's gonna be a long-ass review. I don't know any other kind.
I was right all along. Savage heart cannot be conventionally civilized.
Maybe you live in a different America than we.
I'm gonna cut you up, piece by piece.
Civilization is a truly beautiful thing, Mr. Marston.
Well, looks like we're about to settle the score.
So it seems.
I'm so happy to announce that this video is sponsored by me. Or should I say a smaller, sexier version of me. That's right, the Actman U2's vinyl figure is here. Available for pre-order using the link in the description and pinned comment. Go to their website and you can get a nice look at this awesome little dude. They really got my physique down and they ship them out worldwide. Make sure you place your order quick because once they sell out, they will never be available again. And having one of these next to your computer or console is guaranteed to remove all skill-based matchmaking from your multiplayer matches. But not really. So go down there and pre-order it before we sell out.
And now for something completely different.
Howdy partners, this is the Acting Cowpoke here, and today we're saddling up, taking a trip back to a simpler time. An age often romanticized in the great US of A, the Wild West, the American frontier, and the country's great expansion across the continent. We're going back to when blockbuster titles didn't just live up to the hype, but exceeded it. There's something you need to know, fella. I ain't the biggest fan of Rockstar games. Boo! I know. I like using cheat codes, going on mass killing sprees, not finishing the main story, and then calling it a day. What a fool I've been. Red Dead Redemption is often placed amongst the greatest games of all time, but does it still deserve to be? I suppose we'll find out. But the soundtrack alone might be enough to get the job done. Many of you have incessantly asked me to review this game. Some of these requests go back, 150 weeks? I'm sorry I didn't listen sooner. But now's the time to ask the big questions. Were you all full of crap? I don't have any nostalgia for Red Dead. Perhaps some of you are blinded by it, paralyzed, dumbstruck, and maybe the game isn't as great as you remember. Or perhaps Rockstar sold 24 million copies of this game for very good reasons. There's got to be some explanation for why it became one of the best-selling games ever made. Is Red Dead still fundamentally sound? Or have 12 years of good memories caused us to forget its flaws? Is Red Dead Redemption worthy of being called a masterpiece? Well, let's saddle up and catch us some cattle rustlers, find that scum Bill Williamson, and gallop our way straight into this. Draw!
Well, I, for one, am grateful, Mrs. Bush, that they are finally bringing civilization to this savage land.
I could not agree with you more, my dear.
The conversations heard in the opening train ride seem innocuous, besides the casual racism, but you're not supposed to notice that these people are setting the tone and establishing the main themes for the rest of the game. I mean, this fine lass will walk by and you won't even know who she is. Yet. Red Dead is set in 1911 amidst the backdrop of the Mexican Revolution, the final years of the Wild West. Red Dead explores the relationships between Mexican and American outlaws. And it has the balls to portray what we consider today to be horrific, outdated ideas.
I've always been a little afraid of savages, if I'm honest. But your mastery of basic English and openness to rational discussion is nothing short of reassuring.
Red Dead is it's such a deep game. It explores the role of family and friends in our lives, and the role of government. Dare I say it might even be political?
Look, violence isn't the answer.
Maybe you live in a different America than we.
This is also 3 years before World War I. That's one of the big themes. Civilization. It's coming for the West. The days of brigands, outlaws, chaos, and rebellion will soon be over. Justice and the law are coming, along with the men wielding it. Automatic weapons, big cities, automobiles, explosives, railroads, democracy, a state-controlled society. Neither corrupt governors nor innocent bystanders or hardened outlaws can escape any of these things, much as they try. This backdrop to the Wild West setting gave Rockstar a unique opportunity to explore more modern elements during a time that's not often focused in this type of media. God knows we have enough generic Wild Western stories, thank you, John Wayne. But what separates Red Dead Redemption from being one? Because nothing else does what Red Dead does. No other game has such an expansive, believable take on the open world of the Wild West. And since Red Dead came out, no one has dared try. I mean, besides the prequel sequel, the only other title I can think of that's even remotely similar is Fallout New Vegas. Coincidentally, both Rockstar and Obsidian traveled the country to do research on the places they'd eventually create in-engine. Is it any coincidence that both games are masterpieces in terms of open world? It feels like there's 500 World War II shooters for every one set in the Wild West. I don't know, I guess cowboys and video games go together about as well as mustard and orange juice. I don't even know what that means, partner. Red Dead Redemption isn't just a great cowboy game. It's unequivocally the best cowboy game.
It's too late to talk about things. Give it up already. Your fellers are dead, Copper Reed, and you're next.
Red Dead also is very mature with its themes. It doesn't romanticize the past like so many Western films do.
Me, you, him, we're all shooting people. Don't really seem like we're so very different.
The difference is why, Mr. Marston. The ideals we hold, there can never be revolution without blood.
Until people forget what they're shooting for and just enjoy killing for its own sake.
You Americans forget too quickly. That is the problem. If it wasn't for your revolution, you would still be making tea for the English.
It doesn't gloss over the horrible living conditions and cutthroat nature of life. It doesn't pretend that racism didn't exist.
It was a good country once. Now people are eating each other, and it's all the fault of the Jewish, British, Catholic, homosexual elite and their ideas.
Yes, thanks for reminding me about the Jews, Herbert. You know, throughout the game, we aren't exactly living the rootin', tootin', shootin' life of a do-good cowboy.
You know, I dreamt of documenting the last days of the Old West, the romance, the honor, the nobility. But it turns out it's just people killing each other.
It always was, Professor. And the Old West ain't quite dead yet.
Rockstar likes to come up with fake locations set in real places, but geographically I think the game takes place somewhere around here, near the Mexican border. New Austin is the name, the last reprieve for our protagonist, the unbreakable John Marston.
It's honey.
Family man, criminal, outlaw, bounty hunter. He's been called many things, and through his eyes we explore the world of Red Dead. You'll get to herd cows and shoot brigands. You'll rob trains, hunt down thieves. You can live the life of an honorable cowboy and spare your enemies, or become a merciless gunslinger. What do you mean my tab's $2? I kill you! Red Dead allows you to fulfill every cowboy fantasy you could have. Want to walk into a saloon and get shit-faced drunk and pass out? You bet. Want to lasso a thief and drag his ass back to the store he stole from? You can. Want to cheat in poker and get into a gunfight because of it? Does a bear crap in the woods? Well, let's get one thing straight, partner. I will not tolerate any smack talk against the world building in Red Dead. They shoot you for that in Texas, partner. I'd say the only thing that has aged as well, visually, as Red Dead Redemption is Keanu Reeves, riding underneath the blazing sun, or watching the red glow of the sunset, or seeing the night sky light up with stars, rafting down a river as groups of men and horses ride downhill, their gunfire illuminating the night. It's cinematic gameplay at its finest. And can you believe all it took to create such an incredible world in video game form was 1,000 employees working for 5 years, with periods of endless crunch so bad that spouses of employees emailed Rockstar asking them to stop? That all it took was a $100 million budget and a team of insanely talented people? Yes, Red Dead was such a massive video game, so widely anticipated and utterly successful that it established a monopoly on the entire Wild West genre. Because any Western game that came out after Red Dead would be compared to it and would be inferior. But what's actually so great about this game? Am I just wobbling my jaw? Well, the opening sequence doesn't explain a whole lot. There's a load of people getting off a boat. One of them is Mr. Marston, accompanied by 2 people we won't see again for a long time. And we get a slice of life as John walks through the modern town of Blackwater and takes the train down to the rugged, unpaved streets of Armadillo. The men don't talk. They know why they're here, but the player doesn't. Not yet. Rockstar has God-given talent when it comes to writing protagonists, and John Marston is no exception. I could write a whole fucking paper on how awesome this guy is.
I don't care who a man is, what he does or where he's from. If he treats me right, I'll do the same.
It's that simple for you, isn't it?
For one, John never says anything stupid. In fact, he's got some of the best one-liners in the world.
You always got a plan, Dutch.
You always was a traitor! You bastard orphan!
And you always was a dumb inbred hick! You couldn't shoot a fart out of your own ass!
John Marston is a man running from his past, while at the same time attempting to salvage it. His family was kidnapped by government agents. They forced John's cooperation in tracking down, killing, or capturing his former gang members, Bill Williamson, Dutch Vanderlind, and Javier Escuela. The bulk of the story is this wild bantha chase, but there's tons of characters, subplots, and mini-quests along the way. John is forced to do things and help people he'd rather just shoot because of what matters to him now. He's given up his life as an outlaw, and now they're pulling him back in. Mr. Marston is also a man of immense wisdom.
I just know there are 2 theories to arguing with women, and neither one works.
Holy shit, this man doesn't miss. John is an anti-hero with a flat character arc, meaning he basically is the same person from start to finish. All the bad shit in his life already happened off screen, so the player is expected to learn and understand his past without it being shown to them. This is harder than it sounds, and this kind of setup quite often leads to shitty writing and forced exposition. You were my brother, Javier Escuela. Remember all those times we did things together? Gosh darn it, you and I are just so different now. Remember our shared history? Normally a story written this way would include something like flashbacks to avoid said shitty writing. You know, like Game of Thrones conveniently giving one character the power of omnipresence so they can just straight up look into the past. But somehow, Rockstar made this story work without flashbacks. That should tell you how good the writing is. That we don't need to see John's backstory with his gang or his family in order to believe it and understand it. One of the major questions and themes Red Dead poses the player is on forgiveness. Can a man truly atone for the sins of his past?
People don't forget. Nothing gets forgiven.
At first, we the audience aren't exactly sure how to feel about John. We hear tales of his various misdeeds, but at the same time, we exert control over some of his choices. And John's not very forthcoming with his reasons for being in New Austin. He doesn't like sharing his feelings.
You ain't very talkative, are you?
Nope.
I'm just chewing the dog, mister. It's how I am. I don't mean nothing by it.
Trust me, There's things you better off not knowing.
I like that he doesn't just show up and the first thing he says to everybody is, I'm looking for my family and kid. I have to rescue them. You know, he's not a bitch. That's not his style. John Marston is a former outlaw forced to be a vigilante so he can become a family man. And when John meets with Jake at the start of the game, one of the first things Jake says is, hey, you gonna be here long? You should get yourself some poontang if so, boy howdy. And John replies, I'm a married man, I'm afraid. Right off the bat, we see John is honorable with his wife, committed to her. And initially I thought Rockstar was gonna let you, perform the reproductive act with women and prostitutes as a gameplay mechanic. But John Marston ain't that kind of man. This one time I saved a prostitute and she was like, I'll give you a quickie later. And John said, sorry, miss, I'm a married man. It's such a small detail, but it says a lot about how much he loves Abigail. So you get to feel that before you actually meet her. Near the start of the game, John confronts Bill Williamson at Fort Mercer.
Bill, I've come for you! Bill Williamson! Bill!
Now, I haven't played a single second of Red Dead Redemption 2. I know, right? I'm ashamed to be subscribed to myself sometimes. It seems like Red Dead Redemption 1 was specifically written to set up a prequel. We'll check back on this statement in 8 years once I get around to reviewing it. But that's the thing, you can easily imagine and feel the history between John, Dutch, Javier, and Bill. You know, Javier does this thing where he says brother 100 times. He's like very clearly trying to be like, hey John, remember all those good times? And Dutch is like the crazy father figure that's gone out of control. And Bill's like his older brother, a rival to him.
You implore me?
I got a plan, John.
Come on, brother. Lord. I implores you to go back and tell them to send someone just a little bit more impressive next time.
Hey, fuck you.
Oh. Poor John.
John is shot and left for dead. Ironically, it's not his first rodeo with this sort of thing. But by the grace of the buffalo, the man is saved by the voluptuous Bonnie McFarlane, a fierce but fair woman of the West.
It cost us $15.
I'm sorry, madam. Should have left me there to die.
Jesus, John, I could sell a wolf pelt for $15. Have some self-esteem. But this part serves as a tutorial as you learn how to ride horses, herd cattle, and get acquainted with the game's base mechanics. In Rockstar games, I think most can agree that gameplay is considered secondary to story, characters, dialogue, and the world. Now let's talk game design. While the GTA series often allowed you to use outrageous and wacky cheat codes that broke immersion and let you spawn in jetpacks, Red Dead doesn't have that. It makes the game much more immersive, but ultimately a bit less fun. Ain't no tomfoolery in these lands. Giddy up! Everything from the combat to horseback riding, character animations, the motion capture and cutscenes, the entire game was designed to be as immersive as possible and to make the world feel real. It does. Unfortunately, this dedication to realism comes at the cost of more dynamic and fun gameplay. I've been sucking the proverbial cock of this game up until this point. Let me tell you what I don't like about it. Well, the first thing you need to do if you boot up Red Dead Redemption is set the aiming to expert mode, okay? If you play on the standard settings, the game plays itself and it's a total joke. There's also no difficulty modifiers in this game, which I find really odd. You know, having a night and day transition is cool in the open world. You know, what's not cool is having constant downtime waiting for missions to be available. This isn't a problem in games like Oblivion and Skyrim because you can always just run the clock if you want to wait 4 hours or whatever. In Red Dead, you instead have to camp outside of town or purchase property and sleep there. You cannot save from pausing the game, and you can't choose how much time you pass when you fall asleep. So, this can lead to frustrating situations. For example, I head out to this mission and the game says, your family isn't here, come back later. So I go back home, head to bed, wake up, run to the mission, and come back between 11 and 6 p.m. Alrighty then. So I return home, go back to bed, wake up, run to the mission, and come back between 11 and 6 p.m. Okay, this better be it. This better be the last time. So I run home, go back to bed, wake up, run to the mission, and your family member isn't here come back later. But he's right there, you asshole. He's right there. He just fell asleep. Doesn't happen all the time in Red Dead Redemption, but it's a total pain in the ass when it does. It's literally just a waste of time. Sometimes you just sit in front of a building waiting for the mission to be available because you can't wait it out yourself. Or, you know, like those missions where you're walking with a dog for 5 minutes as he does nothing and no dialogue is spoken until he sniffs the right thing. Or like if you die battling in one of the forts, you get teleported back to the last city you were at. Can't you just put me back outside the fort and save me some time? No! However, it should still be seen as a compliment that these are some of the biggest issues of Red Dead Redemption. It just wastes your time occasionally. Like every Rockstar game. However, one of the big issues I have with gameplay is the control. This is one of the best-selling games of all time, and for some hat-flippin' reason, it was never ported to PC. Why is that? You can't adjust or change any of the controls or clunky aiming on console. You see, all of my problems with how the game controls and aiming could be fixed if it had a PC port. Why does the aiming feel so fucked up at times?
I blame the Mexicans.
No. It's not the Mexicans. They didn't do that. It's like the aim acceleration is out of whack. It starts off slow and gets lightning quick. Your crosshair often just whips past your target. You wish you could up the sensitivity or something, but no. You just have to
deal with it.
Yes, the game is hyper realistic and still looks phenomenal to this day, but it comes at the cost of feeling clunky. Now don't take this as me saying it ain't fun to shoot folk. Boy howdy, it sure is. Especially with Deadeye, John Marston has been granted the superpower of slowing down time and placing accurate shots before unleashing a deadly volley of bullets across all in his path. It's a pretty awesome power to have, and makes for some very epic moments. A lot of Red Dead Redemption's animations were best in the industry in 2010, but how have they aged overall? The fucking Pokemon game that sold 10 million copies in 3 days can't even animate people's legs properly. That was 12 years after Red Dead, man. But like I said, the realism comes at a cost. Sometimes the act of climbing up a cliff becomes a chore when John just slips all over the place. You have to be precise with where you're standing before you jump, otherwise it doesn't trigger the climbing animation. And sometimes you're walking on a slight incline and John starts veering off in a random direction. I didn't tell you to go that way. Another problem I have is that every weapon has the same reticle. Now, in games like Halo, different reticles make the weapons feel different. For example, shotguns usually have a big old circle because it's a shotgun, but not in Red Dead. It makes a lot of the weapons feel too similar. A lot of times it feels like you're just playing a game with one or two weapons. And that concludes my list of major complaints with the game. Because when you play Red Dead Redemption, you don't think, oh man, this really feels like it came out 12 years ago. No, what you feel is, holy shit, this really came out 12 years ago? The ragdoll physics are about as real as they possibly get. I swear to God, every time you shoot somebody, they react in a completely different way. Whatever technology they used for this is god tier. It makes shooting things that much more satisfying when you watch them limp away, or see a man get flung off his horse and dragged along the road. And it's not just humans. The ragdolls for carriages, horses, and it never looks fake or video gamey.
Did you see that dive?
That was like Olympic athlete level type dive. Holy God. I love lassoing people. It's so much fun just dragging their ass across the sand and watching them flop around.
Come on then. Mister, I brought your wife back. Come on, we're almost there. Come on, that's a good dog. Good dog.
And aside from incredible physics, Red Dead Redemption absolutely slaps in the style department. The visuals, sound effects, music, that red and black tint that makes everything stand out. The noises that play when you pause the game. All of it is so iconic and vivid. When the music picks up and the shootouts start happening, you forget any problems with aiming. God damn, Does it feel like you're playing through the climax of the greatest Western film? But no movie is complete without an occasional sassy one-liner, and our boy John packs them on his chest like a fucking bandolier. This man would have thrived in Modern Warfare 2 lobbies. Even the insults are ripped from the early 1900s with his 20th century euphemisms.
You're just a bunch of women playing outlaw!
You couldn't shoot a fart out of your own ass! You ain't outlaws! Chump!
Don't worry, we'll find your kid's good orphanage. You look like the offspring of a goat that fucked a sheep. And you know, the trash talk changes based on where you are. Like, for instance, at the end of the game, when you're fighting people, John says stuff that's relevant to the context of that fight. Or when you're fighting in Mexico, sometimes the banditos shout out things like "Viva la Revolucion!" In-game trash talk is immersive in the same way that Battlefield soldiers or Battlefront's clones shouting things out added to the overall immersion of the game.
Just like the simulation.
The music fucking carries Red Dead Redemption. Have you seen the list of tracks? There's like 300 of them. I mean, granted, some are just slight variations of another, but that's a long list of badass music to make for one game. Leave it to two guys named Bill and Woody to make the greatest Western soundtrack ever made. Red Dead isn't just an action-packed shoot-'em-up, though. There's some somber tracks as well. The kind of music that makes you reflect on your own past and the things you ain't proud of. And how do you carry that burden? Are you proud of the man you are? Or are you still dreaming of the man you want to be? As for me, I don't even know anymore. Boy, that got deep. Sure, realism can make this feel less like a video game, but at the same time, there's nothing that plays like this, or feels like it, or has a style like it. It's iconic, it's classic, it's legendary, unforgettable. On a technical level, the game is mostly flawless. Glitches and bugs are extremely rare. One time a horse just kind of stroked out.
What the fuck? What the fuck? Get off, what? You weren't even biting me.
During one of the final cutscenes, a bloodied Jack Marston from a previous mission stayed in the cutscene.
What is that? What the fuck is that?
Where John's family leaves the farm and it kind of changed the tone of that scene a bit.
Don't worry about me. Just get him out of here.
No! Uncle, please! Oh my god! They killed him!
But there's a lot of cool details in Red Dead Redemption that I don't think get enough praise. Like, every time you finish a mission, John is doing something different. Instead of just like, the mission's over, here, you have control, there's a little 15-second blip of cinematography. A horse carriage rides off and it pans to John, or he's leaning against a power line smoking a cigarette. Rockstar utilized motion capture for everything. The horses, character movements, facial expressions, and animations. Motion capture is a painstaking process, but it is sure to stand the test of time. In the same way Resident Evil 4 and LA Noire do, these games still look fantastic. There's not one scene in Red Dead that's animated as poorly as any in Mass Effect Andromeda. You know, something as simple as a moving wagon is given immaculate detail. A shovel on the side of it has physics and moves. The wheels have suspension. It's insane how far Rockstar went to include these minuscule details. Another thing that's great is the dialogue, and boy howdy, there's a ton of it.
You know, gentlemen, this man here, oh, he married a whore.
But something interesting happened to me on my travels. I was riding with Reyes and having a conversation when I fell in the water like a dumbass. Upon going back through that same area, the conversation was different. It's almost like The game has multiple recordings of dialogue for some or all of these horseback scenes in-game, which is insane. Imagine writing and recording 3 separate conversations that for most players will only hear one of those. Another neat thing is buying newspapers, which have authentic ads and articles that detail the outdated beliefs of the time, like that tobacco fights tuberculosis. Smoke up in the workplace, buddy. Often these newspapers report news of John's exploits, and like saving Bonnie McFarlane or killing a man in a duel. And unlike Halo Infinite, Red Dead Redemption is able to provide a variety of biomes despite its restrictive setting. You'll stroll through the sophisticated town of Blackwater, the slightly snowy mountaintops. You'll gallop across the prairie and plains of nothing but desert and death. You'll see vultures and cougars, wild dogs, eagles, rabbits. There's a sense of scale, and the world feels even more alive with random NPC encounters. Sometimes a man loses his horse to a thief, and you chase him down for a small reward. NPCs roam the land and can get attacked by 3 fucking bears? Just like you do. Or sometimes you walk into town and see a group of banditos dragging some helpless fool through the streets. Or some hillbilly buttplug might be threatening his girl with a knife outside the saloon. Remember when CD Projekt Red bragged that Cyberpunk had the most believable open world? Yeah, they were still a decade behind Rockstar. You know what, partner? I had my fingers crossed. There's still a few things that I dislike about Red Dead. Visually and thematically, the open world of New Austin is just breathtaking, but not always breathtaking to play in. As an open world game that offers players reasons to explore, I felt it quite lacking. There's so many buildings you can't go into, even ones with open signs on them. Red Dead might have a variety of intricate levels and new weapons you can purchase, but the gameplay is mostly the same from start to finish. But when I play a really long single-player game, I usually like some kind of RPG mechanics to feel like I'm getting stronger. But at a certain point, I stopped doing side missions. I stopped exploring off the beaten path or trying to accomplish challenges because the rewards were never that impactful to my gameplay experience. If I did something in Red Dead, it was because I wanted to see more story. There's lots of fun mini games and activities like throwing horseshoes and actual poker, 5-finger fillet, you can even arm wrestle. But I didn't spend too much time doing these things because the only reward was money. And money ain't all that important in Red Dead. Aside from a few key items, I didn't really spend much time buying stuff in stores either. It's a real shame because I didn't feel all that incentivized to explore beyond the main game. The stranger missions though, those were great. But with no crafting system, hunting and skinning animals also felt superfluous at a certain point. I'd say there's just as much depth to the people of New Austin as there are the factions in New Vegas. You'll meet benign, helpful people like Bonnie McFarlane, you'll run into eccentric merchants like Nigel West Dickens, and hardcore scientific racists like Harold McDougal, a man who asks John if he wants to do coke.
Would you like to partake of a syringe of cocaine? I've quite enough for 2.
Not right this minute, no.
So it's a remarkable drug.
Some characters may not seem like they serve much to the plot, but to the overarching world, their roles can't be understated. They each represent a slice of life in the barren wastelands. Landon Ricketts is an old cowboy legend whom you meet long after his glory years. He serves as an impromptu mentor to John, and is a clear inspiration from Clint Eastwood and John Wayne, I think. You meet a man who spends too much time around corpses, named Seth, who is just the embodiment of chaotic neutral. One of the biggest twists to me was finding out that Abigail, John's wife, was a former prostitute.
Oh, he married a whore.
And the rest of John's gang fucked her, and John still married her. He was that in love. If you ever find yourself bored with the classic Rockstar game design of running to a location for 5 minutes, you'll never get tired of the people in Red Dead. Unfortunate for me, the game is extremely long and has one of the best stories ever written, so I can't possibly cover all of it. I feel like for me, it's impossible to do the game justice, just as it's impossible for John Marston and his gang to avoid justice. Red Dead gives you quite a bit of freedom in what order you progress through the main story, as you can see from this tree. But the core arcs of the story are unchanged. You'll meet and help a ton of different people along your quest for vengeance, Bonnie McFarlane is the first. She's a fierce yet kind woman who develops a small crush on her boy. I mean, damn, I'd have a crush on him too if I was a woman. You help out around her ranch, repay the debt before getting back on your feet, and then the next stop is Armadillo, where John comes across local Sheriff Johnson. You aid him and his officers in cleaning up crime, rescuing Bonnie McFarlane from kidnappers. You befriend some bizarre people to forge an alliance, and storm Fort Mercer, including the illustrious Nigel West Dickens, a man who peddles snake oil and performs like a WWE wrestler with his speeches of fake medicine that'll make you fly. John and the Goon Squad succeed in taking the fort, but fail to capture Bill Williamson. So it's off to Mexico, where Bill and Javier Escuela are hiding. John and the drunk Irishman get into a spectacular river rafting gunfight before landing in Mexico. As you mount your horse, you're greeted with a song that whispers the arrival of a foreigner stepping into a hostile land.
Step in front of a runaway train, just to feel alive again.
A good part of the game takes place in Mexico, and John finds himself involved in the Civil War. Initially, he sides with the corrupt government, not because of their politics, but because they bribe him into helping them. Colonel Allende is the leader of the government, and we see what a piece of shit he is. He leads the Mexican army, but after doing so much work for him, the fucking asshole betrays us. How could you? Luckily, Abraham Reyes and his rebellion save us from death, so now we're helping them. After a long, winding road, we eventually capture and imprison and possibly kill Javier Escuela. That cabron sure loves to run his mouth. Later, we finally come face to face with Billy. Been a long time coming, old pal. 2 down, 1 to go. We return to America and meet those men from the beginning. Edgar Ross and his crony. These are the 2 men responsible for kidnapping John's wife and child. There's a bit of hostility between the 3.
Like you will. You don't just walk away from that. Buy a few chickens and make it all disappear. You should be dead or rotting in a jail cell by now. We are giving you a chance at new life. A chance at redemption.
Still, you push forward, meeting up with McDougal and getting caught up in a fight with Dutch's men and a group of Native Americans. There's a long series of shootouts as we hunt Dutch back to his hideout. It's the end of the line, Dutch! You got nowhere left to run! And Dutch Vanderlyn, unable to escape, goes out on his own terms. Well, cowfolks, it's the end of the line. John Marston has fulfilled his end of the bargain, eliminated his old gang, and though he is long overdue for the reward of seeing his son, watching him grow up, and reuniting with his wife Abigail, unfortunately, the celebrations are brief. But it is quite cathartic to see John finally reunited with his family. After so many missions, so much buildup, and dealing with bullshit and getting betrayed, and fucking Colonel Allende. The few missions we get to spend with Jack and Abigail and Uncle, well, they feel special. We see John and how he bonds with Jack, what kind of man he wants him to be, what kind of man he teaches him to be, and how he wants Jack to avoid the life he lived, the life of an outlaw. Now we're doing many of the same things we did on Bonnie McFarlane's ranch at the start. And at this point you're thinking, you know, John can finally be the husband and father he wanted to be. He's earned his Red Dead redemption. And for all the horrible shit that's happened, for all the good people that have died, you think, at least there's a happy ending.
If you think this has a happy ending, you haven't been paying attention.
John, come here.
What's that, Uncle?
John, come here, quick. Take a look at that.
Wait, what? But unlike most narratives, Red Dead has 2 climaxes. Jack tells John he wants to write a book about his father's journey, but the conversation is cut short when Uncle yells out for us. Bad people are on their way.
Well, old man, looks like things is about to get settled once and for all.
So it seems.
Get in the house, boy. Protect your mother. God damn it, no! This story's gonna have a happy ending. I put too much of my heart getting back to this farm. You wanna rustle? You wanna tango? Well, let's fucking go! It's time for one last shootout. They brought a whole army to take me down. And you know why? 'Cause that's what it's gonna take. You're just a bunch of women playing outlaw. Uncle tragically falls defending the farm, but his sacrifice buys John the time he needs to help Abigail and Jack escape on horseback. I'm gonna miss you too. There's no escape for John, is there?
People don't forget. Nothing gets forgiven.
So be it. No!
Oh, bury me not on the lone prairie where the coyotes wail and the wind blows free. And when I die, don't bury me 'neath the western sky on the lone prairie.
Ladies and gentlemen, John Marston is dead. Let us never forget him. Let us forgive him. I think this final scene took most people by surprise. It happens so suddenly. Edgar and John don't even say anything to each other. The army just shows up and they both knew it was gonna happen. One part of the game mind-fucked me the most. In the Stranger Missions I Know you've been helping some random guy with ethical dilemmas, and after doing 3 or more of those, you meet up with him around John's farm. He disappears. John tries to shoot him. Nothing happens. And you're like, what the fuck was that about? What did he say?
This is a fine spot. See you around, cowboy.
Oh my god. That's where John is buried. In conclusion, Red Dead Redemption is a generation-defining title. It's a textbook example of when absolutely everything works. And most of my criticisms are just criticisms that apply to all of Rockstar's games. But the tale of John Marston will stand tall, forever remembered as one of the most heart-tugging, tragic stories in all of gaming. Huh? Wait, the game's still going on? Oh, I'm playing as Jack Marston. Turns out, there's one last piece of business to take care of. Edgar Ross. Jack tracks down the man who orchestrated his father's death. Now retired and enjoying the good life. He doesn't deserve it. Jack, filled with a thirst for vengeance, approaches the man. One last duel. And that's it. That's the true ending of Red Dead Redemption. It's a game that tackles many themes, but none more so than the hopeless struggle, the cycle of violence, and the inability to escape your past. John can't outrun his past, and his former friends who betrayed him can't outrun theirs. Neither can the men who forced John to track them down. Neither can John's son escape the cycle of violence his father participated in. Although the game has redemption in its name, our protagonist does not achieve it. A lot of the mini quests and subplots end with people dying, and it leaves you thinking, what was the point? What was the point of that cannibal eating people near the hanging rock? What was the point of me buying this woman from an abusive man just for her to get killed by him anyways? Like I said, this isn't a cheerful story, and there's far too many pointless deaths and suffering.
Father must not die in vain. His death must mean something.
It'll mean that war is brutal and unnecessary and good people die. And that's all it will mean.
After the duel with Edgar, Jack looks at his gun, and in that moment, he realizes he's going down the same life path of his father. Jack Marston will inevitably become the very thing his dad died to prevent. John Marston died with the hope that his son and wife could live better lives than him, and Jack inevitably becomes an outlaw. Or does he? His fate is mostly left unknown. But one thing is certain, as I watched the credits roll and reflected on what I had just played, I could only describe Red Dead Redemption as one thing: a masterpiece. But thank you all for watching. Hope you enjoyed the video. Leave a like if you did and subscribe to the Act Man for more awesome content. And don't forget to order my YouTubes before they go out of stock forever. Really appreciate you guys supporting the channel. Oh, and one last thing. What the hell is this?